Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of short playthroughs of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics on Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Superbug, which was a 1977 release from Atari and was developed by Howard Delman, who would go on to work on a number of games from Atari throughout his long career, including Canyon Bomber, Fire Truck, and the Quadrascan vector hardware that went on to power games like Lunar Lander and Asteroids, so he was a busy boy, definitely. Superbug was actually Delman's first video game project at Atari, so he had to learn a lot of things on the fly as he was working on this. He also had to learn to trust other people, which was a big thing. Everything he'd done previously while he was learning to program at school, he'd sort of done all himself. And so it was quite an adjustment period for him to learn to hand things over to other people and understand that during things like the manufacturing process for it, he wouldn't be there to oversee that sort of thing. So that was something he had to learn during this process as well. The game itself actually ended up being pretty revolutionary in a lot of ways. It was one of the first games to feature a scrolling playfield that sort of gave the impression of a continuous world rather than a static screen. And it went on to inspire a couple of follow-ups, which we've already seen on this series at this point. Those were Fire Truck, also known as Smokey Joe, and Monte Carlo, which I previously referred to as Monaco, which is not correct, so I apologise for that. Anyway, that is Superbug, which is a very fun racing game that I like very much, so let's go play it. Okay, here we are with Superbug. This is a game that I've come to really enjoy as part of this collection. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but it's a lot of fun. So, I mean, let's have a go. So, off we go. Much like the other racing games in this compilation, this is a racer where you have a manual transmission vehicle. So you have 4 gears to play with, and they basically determine your maximum top speed. So nothing more complicated than that. And then all you have to do in this one is just get as far as you can on a single tank of fuel, with your fuel doubling as your time limit. Oops. Like Fire Truck and Monte Carlo, which succeeded this game, this was the first of this type of game from Atari, you get an extended play if you score a particular amount of points before your fuel expires. I forget what it is. It's something like 120 or 150 or something like that. It does tell you on the title screen, but I neglected to look at that apparently. And the rate I'm going, I'm not sure I'm going to make it, but we'll see. So yeah, I like this game just because of its simplicity and purity. It's fun. I mean, that's pretty much the straightforward thing you can say about it. Is it's just straight fun. It's nothing complicated. It's easy to understand. Anyone can play it. Although this does have a slightly higher barrier to entry than some games of the period, in that it's not just pushing directions and a fire button. You've got an accelerator. You've got gear shifts to worry about. I just thought the whole concept is a little bit more demanding than simpler games. But I mean, it's still pretty simple. The concept is still drive as far as you can without crashing. And pretty much anyone can understand that, I'm sure. There's nothing on the screen that would sort of distract you from that goal or mislead you. Actually, that's not quite true. If you look in a number of places, the parts where arrows show up, you will see that it looks like there's junctions in the road at those points, but there aren't. If you don't go the direction the arrow is pointing, then you will end up in a dead end and you will crash. But I think that's kind of a nice touch. It gives the game a feeling that the game world extends beyond the window that you're looking into it. And that's something I always really liked from this era of games, because they were too limited to be able to do sort of what we now recognise as full-on open-world games. They would use illusions like that to create the sense that there was stuff beyond what you were able to interact with in the game. Just a feeling that the game world was bigger than the part you were interacting with at the time. Okay, so I guess the extended play is... Oh, bonus for 160. So you have to get 160 points to get extended play in this one. Alright, let's have another go. Let's see if we can pull that off. So, like the other games in the Atari Flashback Classics collection that make use of driving controls, the actual implementation of the controls in this is using the analog stick to indicate the direction you want to go. So, it's not a case of push left to turn left and then stop pushing left when you want to stop turning left. It is literally a case of if you want to go right on the screen, you push right and your car will gradually turn to face that direction. Which is one of those things that takes a bit of getting used to if you're not accustomed to it, but I mentioned in a previous video on, I think it was Sprint 2, I actually kind of prefer this kind of implementation. It's something you can only do with an analog controller. And it's kind of similar to what to how paddle controllers in the Atari 2600 driving controller would work, because although you're not turning a dial in this case, you're still making use of an analog control system to point in directions other than the standard 8. And that means the overall sort of flow of gameplay is designed to be a bit smoother and more coherent. Sorry if you can hear banging. I don't know what that is. I think my wife appears to be nailing something down. I don't know what. But yeah, that's what's going on, if you can hear that. If not, well, yeah, I'm going insane, clearly. Anyway, let's have another go, accompanied by the rhythmic thumping of my wife's hammer. Yeah, so you can see this is a black and white game, as were most games at the era, but you will also notice that there's a bit of colour on the screen. So we've got the green displays at the top and bottom, and we've got the yellow car in the middle. Now, if you look very closely on the screen, I don't know how well it shows up on the video, but you can see it quite clearly on when you're actually playing this on a decent TV. If you look very closely at those things, you can actually see that there's an overlay over those things. It's simulated in the case of this Atari Flashback Classics version, but on the original arcade machine, it would have made use of coloured overlays on the screen. So actually transparent coloured pieces of plastic through which the screen display would shine through, and because they were transparent plastic, presumably like cellophane or something like that, it would make that part of the screen appear to be coloured. And so in this case, there's a small circular overlay in the middle that goes over the top of the car, because the car doesn't actually move from that spot it occupies in the middle of the screen. And then there's strips at the top and the bottom to make those numerical displays look, I guess they're intended to kind of have the illusion of being like an LED digital display or something like that. I'm not very good at this game, am I? Let's keep going. But yeah, this was a really common approach for games of the period. You see it in all sorts of games from sort of the late 70s and early 80s. Sort of Taito's Space Invaders is a good example. So again, that was a black and white game, but various incarnations of that machine had coloured overlays that simulated the effects of the aliens changing colour as they moved down the screen, or perhaps the bases that you can hide behind being different colours, or all that sort of thing. It wasn't until sort of the 2600 came along that colour graphics started to become a bit more widespread. And then Atari, meanwhile, in the arcades was experimenting with all sorts of different ways of displaying graphics on the screen. So they had their sort of standard bitmap graphics like you've got in this one. But then they were also experimenting with vector technology at the time as well. They had this display called Quadrascan, which was used in games like Lunar Lander and Asteroids, which we've already seen on this. And then there was a later colour version of that, so it actually displayed vector graphics in full colour. And you can see that in games like Space Duel and Tempest and Major Havoc and that sort of thing. And so Atari weren't necessarily the first to do a lot of these things, because sort of the American and the Japanese arcade industries were kind of doing their own thing independently for quite a while, but certainly a lot of things that we take for granted now can be attributed to Atari these days. Like, I can't really find definitive proof of this anywhere online, but this game seems to be widely credited as the first one to have a scrolling playfield. As in, a scrolling playfield where you sort of move between different areas rather than just like a starfield scrolling in the background. Because obviously we'd seen scrolling starfields much earlier than that in simple space games. But this one, we have that illusion of exploring a world, like I mentioned previously. So you're driving around these roads, you're going in different directions. There's a feeling that you're going somewhere. I mean, you never actually end up anywhere in this game. There's no way to finish it. And there's nothing at the end of this road. It just keeps going on and on and on forever, as long as your fuel lasts. But the fact that it creates the illusion of you going somewhere was something that was particularly revolutionary about this at the time. And that was then obviously built on in games like Fire Truck and Monte Carlo, which took the basic concept of this game and expanded on it in various ways. So in Fire Truck we had the cooperative two-player gameplay, and in Monte Carlo we had the full colour graphics, we had the AI controlled cars, we had the different tracks. But by the end of that, sort of the industry was moving on a bit. It was moving more towards sort of three-dimensional racing games and so on. So Atari games in various forms did still put out various racing games, including top-down racing ones. But sort of this age of things, where it was a single-player top-down racing game with a scrolling background, that kind of pretty much died off with Monte Carlo, I think, in favour of other stuff. Which is fine, because I mean, it's hard to see where they could really go after Monte Carlo with the concept. I mean, they could sort of make the structure of it into a bit more of a realistic race. Like, it could do things like track your position and that sort of thing, rather than making it a straight time trial. But other than that, they've sort of done what they could with the formula at that point, and it was time to move on and try some other things, which is good. So if there's one thing you can say about the Atari of this era, is that most stuff that they put their name on, and some stuff they didn't put their name on, was unique. So pretty much everything we've looked at so far has been different to the other stuff that came before it. So sure, in some cases there might be some obvious connections between them, like how one game built on another one, like how Fire Truck and Monte Carlo build on this game. But each game from the period had something unique and distinctive about it. It was a creation in its own right. And you knew that when a new Atari game was coming out, you weren't just going to be getting a clone of the same old thing over and over again. You weren't going to be sort of playing the same game with different graphics. Not the exact same game, anyway. But anyway, I'm determined to get the extended play on this, because I find it reasonably easy to achieve on Fire Truck and Monte Carlo, but for some reason this one, it always just eludes me slightly. I don't know if it's a matter of the road being narrow or something, but I don't know. This game just sort of slightly puts me on edge a bit. I don't know. It's oddly tricky. It doesn't look tricky to watch, I imagine. But yeah, you really do need to respond quickly, particularly to those sharp corners. But it's one of those games that feels really good once you kind of get into its rhythm. You sort of start feeling that... Oh no! Lost it. You sort of start feeling that sense of flow, and you kind of immerse yourself in what's going on, and... Oh no, wrong way. And the only thing that matters is the drone of your engine, and whether or not you're going to make it to 160 points before your fuel runs out, which we're not going to do this time, clearly. But anyway. 140. Getting that pretty consistently. Right. Okay, I'm going to do one more try, and then we'll call it a day for it. Let's try the expert track. How do we activate that one? Like that. Right. So the expert track is harder. Can't remember how, but we'll find out. I'm going to assume... Oh! Yeah. More wibbly wobbly. So a lot less time on straights before you start encountering corners. A lot more of those deceptive junction type things to deal with. More of those narrowing parts. I'm scared to change into fourth gear. Oh, this is intricate. Oh, but it's satisfying. A real feeling of threading the needle with this one. I feel I'm probably going too cautiously to get an extended play, though. Mine will be getting points at a accelerated rate, though, for surviving on the expert course. I'm not sure. It's hard to judge. Uh, 120 with 15 seconds left to go. 130. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you are gaining points more quickly on this one. Which then makes it easier to obtain the extended play. And like in the other games where you can get extended play for this, that then causes the display to invert. Yeah, you could really see that overlay in the middle now, can't you? Oh, I thought it was a straight circle, but it's just it's a sort of spiky starburst. That's kind of cool. So it makes your car look like it's kind of glowing. That's neat. Anyway, this was a nice way to finish this video, wasn't it? Except with a bit of crashing. There we go. 200 points. Ace. I am the best. Although, before we go, let's just depress ourselves with the leaderboards. Which is, this being the Switch version, which not a lot of people have picked up. I'm 11th. That's not too bad. 11th in the world. Who is top? So the top player's only got 280 points. Because there is a theoretical maximum number of points you could get in this game, I guess, because... well, I mean, there's only so much time. You can't get a second time extend. So, yeah, happy with that. Anyway, that's Superbug. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.